So on the first problem, we're going to be working with inequalities all day today. Hopefully we will finish up 2-6 today. Where do you think I should start on problem D? Multiply everybody by 5. Yes, let's get rid of that denominator. So I have to multiply the 3 by 5. I have to multiply my fraction. And I have to multiply the 7. So my 5s are going to cancel here. And I would have 15 is less than or equal to 2x minus 9 is less than 35. What should we do after that? Add 9 to both sides. Or all sides, I guess I should say. So I'm going to add 9, add 9, add 9. See, 15 plus 9 is 24, less than or equal to 2x, less than, what is 35 plus 9? 44, thank you. And then we divide everybody by 2. And I get that 12 is less than or equal to x is less than 22. And then we're going to write our final answer for this using interval notation. So my interval notation, reminder, we start with the smallest value, we end with the largest value. I use brackets if it can include that value. So if it's got that or equal to, and I use parentheses if it does not include that value. So if it doesn't have the or equal to. So what's my interval notation going to look like here? Yes, bracket with a 12, 22, and a parenthesis around my 22. Remember, when you guys are putting in your answers on Canvas, don't put any spaces between things. Don't ever press the space bar. If you do, like, Canvas reads that as being entirely different than without the space. You and I both know that visually it doesn't mean any difference, but Canvas reads that as like, oh, they entered something else here, and it'll mark it wrong even if you do it correctly. All right. Let's go do part E. What should I do first here? Subtract 4. Let's subtract 4 from all the sides. So it cancels out in the middle here. I'm going to have negative 4 is less than negative 1/3 x. Sorry, is less than negative 2. And now what would I want to do with that? Multiply by negative 3. So multiply everybody here by negative 3. That's going to cancel my denominator, and it's going to turn it into a positive. So now I have just x in the middle. I know I'm going to get a positive 12 over here, because negative times negative gives me a positive. And I'll end up with a positive 6 over here. Does it stay less than? Why or why not? We multiplied by a negative. It wouldn't make any sense to still have the less thans because 12 is bigger than 6. When you write it all together as a single inequality, it's got to make sense with what I see there. So we're going to flip our inequalities because we multiplied by a negative number. When I write my interval notation, should it start with 12? No, we always want the smallest thing first. So I'm actually going to rewrite this so that I can see the smallest thing on the left and the bigger thing on the right. And so what would my final answer in interval notation look like? Absolutely correct. Parenthesis, 6, comma 12, and then another parenthesis, because neither of these include, they don't have the or equal to there. Fantastic. Last one on this page here. Where should I start problem F at? Distribute. We've got to use double distribution here because we've got binomials. So I distribute my 2x to both pieces and my -3. So I get 8x squared. I'm going to write that in purple so that I can see where everything's coming from. 8x squared plus 10x, and then minus 12x minus 15. Less than or equal to, we're going to use some double distribution over here as well. I have 8x that gets distributed, and I have the 1 that gets distributed. So I end up with 8x squared minus 56x plus x minus 7. Combine some like terms. So after I'm done with my double distribution, I get 8x squared minus 2x minus 15 is less than or equal to 8x squared minus 55x minus 7. Does anybody notice something interesting that just happened? What do I have that's the same on both sides? So what's going to happen to those? They're going to cancel out. So I'm not going to have an x squared anymore. So I just have negative 2x minus 15 is less than or equal to negative 55x minus 7. What do you guys want me to do from here? Add 15 sounds good. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. I would have negative 2x is less than or equal to negative 55x plus 8. Pedro, what do you think after that?
You add 55x to the other side.
Yep, we're going to add 55x to both sides. So that would give me 53x is less than or equal to 8. Divide both sides by 53. Can I reduce 8 over 53 at all? Nope. So I have x is less than or equal to 8 over 53. But I need to write this as an interval. If it is less than something, what would that look like on a number line? Shaded to the left. My interval notation, I always need to start with the smallest thing. So if it's shaded to the left and it goes on, how would I start my interval notation to explain the smallest value that would work? Negative infinity. Absolutely correct. Would I use a parenthesis or a bracket with negative infinity? Parenthesis, because?
Because you can't get to negative infinity.
You can't actually get there. We can't include it because you can't ever reach it. It's not a destination, it's a description. And then I have the 8 over 53. Would I want a parenthesis there or a bracket? Bracket around that one. There's my final answer. You guys feeling okay about these? All right. These ones are a little bit weird. At first, I look at it, and I immediately want to do what we've done on the other problems. Let's get rid of our denominator. What happens if I multiply both sides by the denominator, though?
0 on the right side.
Yeah, I would end up with 4 is less than 0. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, that doesn't help me figure out what x would need to be, does it? What does it mean for something to be less than 0?
Negative.
It's a negative. Okay, so I'm going to write out in words what this says, because that's going to help me figure out what I need to do. This fraction is less than 0. That means it is negative. I want you to think about any fraction here. So I'm just going to pick out some letters. We're going to have it be a over b. What would need to be true about my fraction a over b if I told you the whole thing was a negative number?
A or B has to be negative.
A or b would have to be negative, but not both of them, right? So either a or b has to be negative. So my numerator or denominator must be negative. So I want you to look at our fraction here. Is the numerator negative?
No.
Could it ever be negative?
No.
No, it's a 4. There's no variables up there. There's nothing I can substitute in for x that would ever make that numerator negative. So if this fraction is supposed to come out to be a negative, and that means that either the numerator or the denominator has to be negative, what's the only option I've got left? You guys said my numerator's not a negative number, and it can't be made into a negative number. So what would have to be negative? Denominator would have to be negative. 4 is positive. So 3x minus 5 must be negative. So I'm only focused on that 3x minus 5 right now. Because this is the thing that would have to be a negative to make my whole fraction negative. How can I symbolically express that 3x minus 5 has to be a negative number? Less than 0. Three x minus 5 would have to be less than 0. So what would I do with this now? Add 5 to both sides. So I get that 3x is less than 5. And then I divide both sides by 3. So any number that is less than 5/3 would make this true, because it would make my denominator a negative number. Give me a number that's less than 5/3. Let's check it. 1/2. 1/2 is less than 5/3. All right, so we have 4 over 3 times 1/2 minus 5. So that'd be 4 over 1.5 minus 5. Does this come out to be a negative fraction? Yeah. So it checks out. What would my interval look like to explain this? We have our answer, x is less than 5/3, so what would my interval look like now?
Negative infinity.
Negative infinity. What else?
Parentheses.
Parenthesis.
5/3.
5/3.
Parentheses.
And another parenthesis. There we go. Let's go look at H. Use some words to describe this to me. What does it say? What does it mean?
X minus 7 is greater than or equal to 0.
X minus 7 would have to be greater than or equal to 0. Why?
Because the numerator is positive.
Yes. This fraction is greater than or equal to 0. If it's greater than 0, it's a positive number. What's the only way to make a fraction equal to 0? Think about my a over b again. If I told you that a over b equals 0, what would you know would have to be true?
A is 0.
A has to be 0, right? Because your denominator is not allowed to be a 0. Can this fraction be equal to 0?
Yes.
Look at what you just told me. If I have a fraction that's a over b and it's equal to 0, then that means my numerator has to be the 0, right? Can this fraction be equal to 0? Why not?
Because the numerator is 2.
The numerator's a 2, and the denominator can't be 0. So I'm going to throw out this or equal to. Even though it's there in symbol form, it can't happen here. My numerator is 2, so the fraction cannot equal 0. So I'm strictly looking at greater than. That denominator has to be a positive number, or else this whole fraction won't be positive. So I'm going to take x minus 7. I'm not going to write that or equal to here, because it can't be equal to 0, right? And then what would I do to solve this? Add 7 to both sides. So I get x is greater than 7. How do I write that using interval notation? Parentheses on both sides. Absolutely correct. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit more words here to explain, especially since I do post these. So this means the denominator must be positive. Are you guys okay with these? A little bit? So-so? I know you're not feeling well today, dear. Hopefully when you look back over it, it'll make a little bit more sense. Do you guys understand why we don't have a bracket on this one? Even though we had that or equal to in the original problem, our final answer can't be equal to 0, correct? If the final answer had that or equal to, if it had a bracket, then we could end up with an undefined fraction. Do you guys have any other questions for me about this before we move on? All right, there's one last concept that we need to talk about in 2.6. We're going to do some absolute value inequalities. What does absolute value mean again? Distance from zero. So I'm looking up here at this first inequality. This is my distance. And it says that it is less than 3. So the distance is less than 3 units from 0. I'm changing it into words instead of just symbols so that we can truly understand what's going on, because I need to be able to wrap my head around it even when it gets more complicated. I'm going to sketch this idea right here on a number line. So if I have my number line like this, here's 0. Where could I be on that number line if I am 3 units from 0? I could be at 3. Is there anywhere else that I could be? I could be at 2. Well, right now I just want to know 3 units from 0. I could also be over at -3. Now I want to get into that less than part. Give me some things that are less than 3 units from 0. 4 is less than 3 units from 0? 2. What else is less than 3 units from 0? 1. What else? -2. Negative what? -1, yes. So all this space in here is less than 3 units from 0, right? Would I get open circles or closed circles on the 3s? Open, why? Can't be on it. It's not inclusive. It says my distance is less than that, not exactly that. So in this space that's shaded, that's where my absolute value lives. Absolute value of x fits right in this space. So I can use that to write an inequality. I have -3 on one side. I have +3 on the other side. And my value for x has to live in that space somewhere. I shouldn't technically have the absolute values here. Which one of those is smaller? -3. So my inequalities go like this. How would I take that and write it using interval notation? -3, 3, parentheses around the whole thing. It's not an ordered pair. It looks like an ordered pair, but it means something entirely different. The meaning of this right here is exactly what I have shaded on the number line. In between -3 and +3, but not including the -3 and the +3. Before I do anything else, I want to know what questions you guys have about this. Yes, ma'am.
How did you determine where if your sign is less than or greater?
That came straight from my problem up here. It was less than. But then when I was looking at it, the way I decided on my final answer, on my number line, less than means to the left of, greater than means to the right of. So when I've got my number line here and I've got this shaded, I can see that the -3 is to the left of where x is, so it would have a less than there. And then I know that 3 is on the right side of x, so x would have to be the smaller thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. What other questions do you guys have about this before we bump it up and look at something that's similar, but where it's not just x? You guys good with what I have? All right. Stop me and ask questions if it doesn't make sense when we get over here. I'm going to talk about this almost the exact same way I was thinking and talking about this one over here. Absolute value always means distance. I don't even care what's in there right now. I just know that this thing means distance. My distance is less than 4 units from 0. So I'm going to think about this on a number line again, because that helps me make sure that I get my inequality set up correctly. Exactly 4 units from 0, and where could I be standing? 4 and -4. These are both exactly 4 units from 0. Am I allowed to be exactly 4 units from 0 on this? No. So I need some open circles here, because it's strictly less than. Can I be over here on the far right and make this true? Is that less than 4 units from 0? Could I be over here on the far left and be less than 4 units from 0? So I have to be in the middle here, right?
Yeah.
All right, so in the middle, the distance is less than 4 units from 0. This is the space where the part inside my absolute value lives, which this time isn't just x, it's 2x plus 5. So I'm going to set up my inequality just like I did over there. The -4 is the farthest to the left, so I have -4 is less than. 2x plus 5 is in here, so I have 2x plus 5. And the 4 is the thing farthest to the right, so that is the biggest. You guys okay with that so far? Make sense? Now I can solve it just like we were solving the ones on the other page. I'm going to subtract 5 from all sides. So I would have -9 is less than 2x is less than -1. And then we're going to divide everybody by 2. And so I get -9/2 or -4.5 is less than x is less than 1/2. Are we okay with how we got there? Do you guys agree that the left side really is the smallest thing here? -9/2 is smaller than -1/2. Yes, this is to the left on the number line. I want to write that using my interval notation now so that I can be done with this. What would this look like in interval notation?
-9/2, -1/2, parentheses on both sides.
Parentheses on both sides, yes. Awesome. Do you guys have any questions for me about that? Okay. This is the last slide of 2.6. Using the exact same thinking I was doing before, I don't even care what's inside, I just know that absolute value means distance. So the distance of this expression from 0 is what? Or is it just 2 units from 0? Greater than or equal to 2 units from 0. I got a greater than this time. The last 2 have been what? Less than. This is especially where those pictures come in handy. So here's 0, 2 units from 0. I could be over here at positive 2, or I could be over here at negative 2. Excuse me. Give me an example of a number that would be greater than 2 units from 0. 3. Give me another one. 4. Give me another one. A million. I like it. So anything over here, right? Do I do filled in dot at 2 or open circle? Filled in. Why? Yep. It can be equal to. Give me something else that is more than 2 units away from 0. Negative 4. Give me another one. Negative 3. Give me something else. Negative what? Negative 10. So I'm looking this way this time. Are we filled in between? No. So my inequality is not going to be in between a smallest and a largest, because that's not where I've shaded. That expression, 2 minus 3x over 5, either lives over here or it lives over here. It has to live in the shaded space. So I'm going to use that to write my 2 inequalities that I'm going to use to solve this. All right, so I have 2 minus 3x over 5. How do I explain that it's over here to the left of negative 2? What inequality would point me to the left? Less than or equal to. So it's less than or equal to negative 2. Or that exact same expression, 2 minus 3x over 5, could be over here on the right side. How do I explain symbolically that it could be over here? Greater than or equal to. Absolutely. Let's solve these now. What's the first thing I would want to do to solve this? Multiply both sides by 5, yes. So I'm going to times this by 5, times this by 5. I'm going to do the same thing over here, because my process stays the same. So times them both by 5, my denominators will cancel out. So I have 2 minus 3x is less than or equal to 10, or 2 minus 3x is greater than or equal to positive 10. Sorry, I forgot my negative over here. I apologize. What do I do after that? Yep, subtract 2. Excuse me. So my 2's are going to cancel. So I have negative 3x is less than or equal to negative 12, or negative 3x is greater than or equal to 8. So close to being done. Last piece. Yep. Or negative 8/3, less than or equal to negative 8/3. I'm going to have to flip my inequality because we divided by a negative. So I have x is greater than or equal to 4, or x is less than or equal to negative 8/3. I need to make all of this just a little bit smaller because I'm running out of room. Last thing I need to do is write my interval notation. Do we have the smallest thing on the left right now? On the left, I have x is greater than 4. Is that the smallest thing? Greater than 4? That's the smallest? No, less than -8/3 should be on the left. That's the smallest thing here. X is greater than 4 needs to be on the right, and I need to remember that when I'm writing my interval notation. We are going to have a union here. Do you guys remember when we wrote the union yesterday? That's how we describe there being a gap on the graph. All right, I'm going to bring this up a little bit higher. There we go. How do I write the first inequality as an interval? Negative infinity. -8/3. What should go around these? Parenthesis and then a bracket. How do I say or using my interval notation? A U for the union. And then what else do I need? Bracket 4, infinity parenthesis. Perfect. That is absolutely 100% correct. All right. We got one problem left. Is my absolute value isolated here? No. That's the first thing I should do, is get my absolute value isolated so that I'm talking just about distance. How can I get that absolute value out of the denominator? How can I get anything out of a denominator? Multiply. Let's multiply both sides by that absolute value. So I'm going to multiply by the absolute value of 5 minus 2x. So on the left, that's going to cancel. And I would have 3 is less than 2 times the absolute value of 5 minus 2x. Do we have our absolute value isolated yet? Nope. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I have 3 over 2 is less than the absolute value of 5 minus 2x. In all of our other problems that we've done with absolute